There comes a moment in every life when a person longs for peace from the battles that take place within the heart. Many people dream of becoming untouchable, of standing unshaken, no matter what words are spoken against them, no matter what disappointments arrive, no matter what rejection or betrayal crosses their path. They imagine themselves immune to criticism, beyond the reach of judgment, free from the exhaustion that comes from pretending to be strong every single day. Deep down, however, the desire is not for indifference, but for rest. It is the longing to finally lay down the burden of constantly proving that nothing can harm you. The hidden truth is that avoiding pain never makes it disappear. The harder you try to numb yourself, the more tightly pain holds you captive. You can surround yourself with masks and walls, but each unspoken word, each small silence, each moment of neglect still pierces you where you are most fragile. This is not weakness. It is part of being human. What separates people is not the absence of wounds, but how honestly they are willing to face them. Some bury their struggles more deeply, others disguise them with greater skill, but everyone carries them. Carl Jung reminded us that we are not defined by what happens to us, but by what we choose to become. The path to freedom is not built by denying suffering or covering it up with cold detachment. True freedom begins when you dare to bring into the light the shadows that have long remained hidden inside you. Strength is not found in pretending to be invulnerable. Strength is found in standing in full awareness of who you are, even when your soul feels raw and exposed. If you have been carrying this kind of hidden weight, know that you are not alone. Many live with the sense that they are always at a disadvantage, always exposed to the power of others, always walking into situations where words cut too deeply and actions leave invisible scars. Yet the most difficult truth is this: what wounds you most is not the behavior of others, but the unhealed places already present within you. Each disappointment, each betrayal, each rejection only finds power because it strikes against an old wound that has not been fully healed. The story you tell yourself about those moments becomes the true source of pain. The abandonment you suffered years ago, the words spoken to you when you were most vulnerable, the emptiness you tried to cover with pride or with endless strength, these are what continue to bleed inside you. Until you have the courage to face them, the same patterns will return again and again, disguised in new faces and new circumstances. Pain is a mirror reflecting the truths you have not yet integrated. This explains why some endure terrible losses, yet remain clear and steady, while others collapse under the weight of a single careless comment. It is not the event itself that breaks us, but the part of ourselves that remains unacknowledged. The illusion many hold is that if they can only act perfectly, if they can be kind enough, clever enough, strong enough, then the world will finally treat them with fairness and care. But life does not work that way. Control is a fragile illusion, and those who cling to it live in constant fear of its shattering. The only way to step out of this endless cycle is to stop protecting yourself from pain. You do not need more armor. You need more awareness. The moment you realize that no action from outside can destroy you unless it awakens something inside, you begin to walk free. Freedom begins when you stop demanding that others change in order for you to feel safe. Freedom begins when you face your own inner wounds without denial. The greatest battlefield is not outside, within the unconscious. Everything that you ignore or refuse to acknowledge will continue to govern you in secret. Until you choose to confront it, your life will be directed not by your conscious will, but by the shadows you fear to see. That is where the real work of transformation begins. You have been taught that control is the path to security, but in truth, the more you attempt to control, the more fragile you become. Life does not bend itself to your will, and the more tightly you try to grip the world, the more painful it feels when it slips through your hands. Carl Jung warned that until the unconscious is brought into awareness, it directs your life, and you will call it fate. This is not an abstract idea. It is visible in every sudden burst of anger, in every wave of sadness that arrives without explanation, in every destructive choice that repeats itself in your life. These are not accidents. They are signals from within, messages from the parts of yourself that you have buried. The unconscious is not a quiet background. It is an active force. It holds the memories you have tried to erase, the desires you felt ashamed to admit, the fears you did not want to face. Each time you ignore them, they return in disguised form. They appear in toxic relationships that repeat patterns you swore to escape. They manifest in anxious thoughts that cloud your mind, even when everything around you seems stable. They surface as self-sabotage at the very moment you are closest to success. What you repress does not die. It waits for you in the shadows, demanding to be acknowledged. This is why you may feel destroyed by words that others would easily dismiss. The words themselves are not the problem. They touch a wound that is still alive inside of you. If those wounds had been healed, the words would pass over you like wind. But because the wounds remain raw, the pain is sharp and unforgettable. The unconscious keeps pushing these points to the surface, not to punish you, but to wake you. It insists that you look at what you have long denied. Most people try to solve this by judging themselves more harshly or by repressing their emotions even further. They imagine that if they silence their inner world strongly enough, the disturbances will vanish. But repression only multiplies suffering. The unconscious does not retreat. It finds other ways to speak. It speaks through repeated failures, through anxious dreams, through depression that descends without warning. Jung described depression as a dark figure who arrives at your door. He said you should not drive her away, but invite her to sit, to have coffee, and to tell you what she means. Every symptom is a message. Every pain is an invitation. The truth is that what you resist will always persist. The more you fight against your fear, the more power it gains over you. The more you condemn your flaws, the more deeply they dig into your soul. Nothing is freed by condemnation. Freedom only comes through acceptance. Until you are willing to see every hidden part of yourself, those parts will continue to rule you from the shadows. You may believe that you are strong by ignoring them, but in reality, you are only fragile, because at any moment, they can rise and overwhelm you. To become untouchable does not mean that you no longer feel. It means that you have already faced everything inside you and made peace with it. When you stop running from your shadows, when you embrace the parts of yourself that you once thought shameful, you no longer react to every external event. You observe. You choose. You act with clarity instead of compulsion. The outside world loses its power to control you because the real battle has already been won within. No insult, no rejection, no betrayal can dismantle what you have already integrated. This is the path Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole. It is not about becoming a perfect person admired by all. It is about becoming real, about integrating your darkness and your light, your strength and your weakness. Individuation requires courage because it means leaving behind the masks you have built to survive. It means daring to see yourself as you are, without the armor, without the performance, without the constant need to be seen as strong. It is not perfection that makes you whole. It is integration. The deeper you travel on this path, the less you fear. Pain no longer feels like a threat, but like a teacher. Every shadow you embrace becomes a source of energy instead of a source of sabotage. You stop living as a puppet pulled by hidden strings, and you begin to live as the author of your own life. That is the meaning of true freedom. Not to escape pain, but to discover that pain has nothing left to hold over you. From childhood, you were taught that pain should be avoided at all costs. You were told that crying was weakness, that feeling too deeply would make you vulnerable, that showing sorrow would invite ridicule. Because of these lessons, you learned to hide your emotions, to distract yourself, to escape from whatever hurt too much to face. Yet avoidance does not dissolve suffering. Ignored pain only changes its form. It disguises itself as restlessness, as bursts of anger, as constant anxiety, as impulses that seem to come from nowhere. One day, after years of avoidance, the structure you built collapses without warning. What you buried does not disappear. It digs tunnels until the ground gives way beneath you. Carl Jung viewed suffering differently. He saw pain not as a curse, but as a messenger of the soul, a language of the self, a signal from the unconscious demanding attention. He compared depression to a woman dressed in black who comes to your home. Instead of pushing her away, he advised you to invite her to sit down, to offer her something to drink, and to listen carefully to what she says. Pain is not random. It is an alarm, a guide, a call to transformation. But instead of listening, most people choose to silence themselves. They numb their feelings. They fill their days with distractions. They bury themselves in work or entertainment. In doing so, they lose the opportunity to hear what pain is trying to reveal. The conflict you feel inside is not merely emotional turmoil. It is the friction between the part of you that longs to grow and the part of you that resists change. Growth demands that old patterns die, and the ego fights to hold on to control. That struggle creates suffering. You may cling to toxic relationships, harmful beliefs, or habits that no longer serve you, simply because letting them go feels too much like death. Yet growth always carries the taste of death of illusions, of identities, of attachments. What is painful is not the transformation itself, but the resistance to it. This process is not destruction for the sake of cruelty. It is the necessary ground from which renewal emerges. When the old certainties crumble, when the masks no longer fit, when the walls you built fall apart, you are left exposed. At first this feels unbearable. Yet in this raw place, stripped of defenses, you finally see yourself clearly. Without layers of performance or false identity, you encounter the truth of who you are. And it is precisely in that nakedness that the possibility of freedom begins. Pain does not close the path. It opens the doorway to authenticity. Suffering becomes sacred when it reveals to you the self you have always hidden. It is not the end of the road, but the beginning of a deeper journey. Jung understood that pain is not an error in the design of life. It is part of the process of individuation. To grow into wholeness, you must cross the valley of shadows. Most people give up before they reach the other side. They run back to the safety of distraction, believing that comfort is survival. But survival is not the same as living. Those who continue walking through the darkness discover that beyond despair lies rebirth. Individuation is not about becoming something greater in the eyes of others. It is about peeling away everything false. It is the unlearning of illusions, the destruction of masks, the surrender of control. To individuate is to recognize that you are not your achievements, not your traumas, not the image carefully constructed to gain respect or admiration. Those were survival strategies, not your essence. To be whole is to discover the self that exists beneath all of that. This discovery feels like fire because it burns away what is temporary, leaving only what is real. As you walk this path, you face your own shadows directly. You look into the eyes of shame, of neediness, of fear, of anger, and you say, I see you. You are part of me, but you no longer rule me. In that moment, the shadow loses its power. Instead of controlling you in secret, it becomes integrated into the larger whole of your being. This is where clarity arises, not from conquering the world, but from reconciling with yourself. True strength is the lucidity to face your darkness without denial. Once you experience this clarity, you no longer depend on the approval of others. You do not need to win every argument or appear unshaken to everyone around you. Your security does not come from recognition, but from the knowledge of who you are. That kind of strength cannot be stolen or destroyed because it does not rest on the fragile surface of appearances. It rests on the core of integration, a center of awareness that remains stable even in the fiercest storms. Pain may still touch you, but it no longer defines you. Suffering may still visit, but it does not dismantle you. You have become whole. The deeper you enter into this process, the more you realize that emotional armor was never your salvation. Many people believe that the only way to avoid getting hurt is to close themselves off from the world. They build walls. They repeat the words, "I do not care anymore," and they convince themselves that indifference is strength. Yet behind the walls, the bleeding continues. Pretending not to feel does not stop the inner corrosion. The issue has never been the presence of emotion. The issue is the lack of awareness about what those emotions truly mean. Carl Jung often emphasized that theories and techniques are useful, but when you meet a human soul, you must do so as another human soul. This is not a call to appear strong, nor is it a demand to hide pain. It is an invitation to authenticity. The self that you have hidden behind masks of control and toughness has been waiting to be acknowledged. That inner voice does not want silence. It wants recognition. It wants to be seen without judgment. Ignoring it does not create resilience. It only deepens the split between who you are and who you pretend to be. To become truly untouchable is not to separate yourself from life, but to integrate with it fully. When you accept your fears, flaws, and insecurities as part of your whole being, they no longer function as weaknesses. They no longer serve as triggers that make you react impulsively to every comment or rejection. Instead, they become absorbed into a deeper sense of self. From this place, you are able to observe situations with clarity rather than being tossed around by them. You no longer live as a puppet pulled by unseen strings. You live as a conscious participant, aware of your choices. This is the essence of individuation. Jung described it as the meeting of light and shadow, ego and unconscious, the visible and the hidden. Individuation is not perfection. It does not mean you are flawless. It means you are whole. You no longer hide parts of yourself in darkness, hoping they will remain forgotten. You bring them into awareness and integrate them into your life. When this happens, no external insult or betrayal can destroy you, because everything that could be used against you has already been embraced. There is no longer a wound to be exploited. Yet this journey requires immense courage. It demands that you step away from masks you have worn for years. It asks you to abandon the belief that your worth lies in being admired or being untouchable in the eyes of others. It challenges you to sit with discomfort rather than running from it. Transformation requires pain, not because life is cruel, but because growth means releasing what you once clung to for safety. Old patterns do not die easily. They resist. They tighten their grip. But when you dare to let go, space opens for renewal. It is natural to fear this process. Change feels like losing yourself, but the truth is the opposite. Change allows you to finally meet yourself. The strength you seek has never been in armor, but in awareness. The more you resist suffering, the more fragile you become. The more you embrace it as part of life, the freer you become. This is why running from pain only makes it chase you more fiercely, while facing it directly transforms it into a guide. When you accept your suffering, you stop battling yourself. The energy you once used to repress emotions becomes energy for creation and growth. You no longer live in constant defense. You live in openness. You live with presence. In this state, pain may still arrive, but it is no longer the enemy. It is a signal that points you toward greater understanding of yourself. The more you embrace this path, the more you discover that true strength is not about being untouchable from the outside, but unshaken from within. This realization marks the threshold of freedom. You begin to recognize that vulnerability is not weakness, but the doorway to transformation. The more you allow yourself to feel, the more you discover that nothing has the power to enslave you anymore. Acceptance dismantles fear. Awareness dissolves illusion. Integration replaces the endless cycle of denial. That is the beginning of true clarity, the clarity that no storm outside can take away. From the time you were small, you were trained to believe that suffering was a mistake, a weakness, or a shameful burden. You were told to stop crying, to toughen up, to carry on without showing any trace of vulnerability. These lessons taught you to run from pain rather than listen to it. Yet what you resist does not vanish. It transforms into restlessness, anger, apathy, or even despair. Avoided suffering finds new disguises. It waits in the background until the moment it erupts, leaving you unprepared. The more you deny it, the more power it gains. Carl Jung taught that pain carries meaning. He believed suffering was not an enemy, but a messenger from the soul. Depression, fear, and sadness were not to be cast aside as meaningless obstacles, but embraced as guides. He compared depression to a woman in black who visits your home. If you force her away, she returns stronger, but if you sit with her, she reveals the truths you most need to hear. Every wound you carry contains a message. Every grief holds a seed of transformation. To reject these visitors is to reject the very opportunities for growth that life offers you. The war you experience inside yourself is the struggle between your desire to evolve and your resistance to change. One part of you longs for expansion, while another clings desperately to the familiar. This inner conflict generates pain. It is not the growth itself that hurts, but the clinging to what no longer serves you. You may hold on to toxic relationships, outdated beliefs, or identities that once gave you safety. To release them feels like betrayal of the self, but in reality, it is the only way to free yourself. Suffering is born in the gap between the call to transformation and the refusal to answer. This is why growth feels like a death. You are asked to let go of illusions, false masks, and attachments that once kept you alive. It is a kind of mourning, an inner burial of the old self. Yet in this space of death, new life quietly begins. When the surface collapses, when you are stripped bare of what you once thought essential, you are invited to encounter your authentic self. For the first time, without layers of performance, you see what has always been within you. This is the paradox. Pain destroys, but in destroying, it also reveals. When you surrender to this process, suffering no longer appears as an obstacle, but as a passage. It becomes sacred because it leads you directly to yourself. It forces you to abandon illusions and to meet the truth of who you are. Jung knew that this process is not easy. Many retreat back into comfort, choosing distractions over transformation. They prefer to survive rather than to live. But those who accept the journey discover a freedom that no comfort can provide. They cross the valley of shadows and arrive at a deeper, more unshakable strength. Individuation, Jung's name for becoming whole, requires this very crossing. It is not about becoming someone better in the eyes of the world, but about becoming real. It involves unlearning false definitions, tearing down the images built to win approval, and facing the unconscious material you once feared. The illusions of control and perfection must die. What remains is not emptiness but clarity, the awareness of who you truly are beyond every mask. This discovery is not easy, but it is liberation. As you begin to embody this awareness, you face your monsters with new eyes. Shame, fear, and loneliness no longer haunt you from the shadows. They stand before you, and you acknowledge them. You do not deny them, but you also do not bow to them. They become part of your story rather than rulers of your destiny. In this confrontation, clarity arises. You realize that your worth is not dependent on external validation. It is not tied to success or approval. It comes from the unshakable knowledge of who you are beneath it all. This is the heart of true freedom. Pain may still visit, but it does not control you. Suffering may still occur, but it does not consume you. You are no longer shattered by every wave because you have learned to dive beneath the surface into deeper waters. There, in the silence of awareness, lies stability, presence, and power. This is the strength that no betrayal, no rejection, no loss can take from you. This is the strength that suffering was guiding you toward all along. Now that you have seen the hidden face of suffering, you are ready to understand the final truth. Nothing external can shield you from pain if you remain unconscious of your inner world. Words will continue to sting, rejection will continue to burn, and loss will continue to break you if you refuse to awaken. Awakening is not a sudden miracle. It is a deliberate choice made every day. It is the decision to look inward, even when it is uncomfortable, to accept responsibility for your emotions, rather than blaming others, the past, or fate. Carl Jung expressed it clearly. What you resist persists, and what you accept transforms. Your entire life, you have resisted the fear of not being enough, the pain of loneliness, and the anguish of not being truly seen. You tried to silence these feelings by striving to be perfect, by wearing the mask of strength, by controlling every detail around you. Yet none of these strategies brought peace. Instead, they left you exhausted, worn down by a war you could never win. Control did not free you. It imprisoned you. True emotional resilience is not built through hardness, but through clarity. It does not mean you stop feeling. It means you see your feelings for what they are, signals, not threats. Awareness transforms the relationship you have with suffering. When you understand your patterns, your wounds, and your triggers, the actions of others lose their ability to dismantle you. You still experience pain, but you no longer drown in it. You still encounter sorrow, but you no longer lose yourself within it. Awareness creates distance without detachment. It allows you to remain present while no longer enslaved. Living with awareness does not mean a life without storms. The world will still bring disappointments, betrayals, and challenges. But when you live from the depth of self-knowledge, these storms cannot sweep you away. People who live only on the surface are shaken by every wave. Those who dive deeply find stability in the silence below. Depth grants power. Depth grants calm. It is in that depth that you become unshaken, not because life is gentle, but because you no longer depend on its gentleness for peace. This path will separate you from many. Most people prefer the comfort of masks. They are afraid to feel, afraid to confront their wounds, afraid of the silence within. As you choose to awaken, you may find fewer companions on the journey. This is not rejection. It is growth. You do not distance yourself from others out of pride, but because you no longer fit into the patterns where you once hid. Maturity often looks like solitude, but it is not loneliness. It is freedom from the need to be constantly validated. The final gift of this journey is consciousness as your shield. Not armor, not indifference, not resistance, but clarity. Clarity is what makes you untouchable. It is the state in which nothing has the power to dominate you, because you are no longer a prisoner of unconscious patterns. You have faced yourself. You have accepted what you once denied. You have integrated the shadows you feared. What remains is not perfection, but wholeness. When you reach this place, you stop merely surviving. You begin to live. The masks fall away, the illusions dissolve, and you find strength where you least expected it in your willingness to feel, to accept, to embrace the entirety of who you are. Pain does not vanish, but it no longer defines you. Suffering does not disappear, but it becomes the doorway to awareness. This is the transformation Jung spoke of, the rebirth that lies beyond resistance. So let this be your choice, to live not on the fragile surface, but in the depth of awareness. To no longer fear pain, but to listen to it, learn from it, and integrate it. To stop resisting and to start transforming. In doing so, you will discover what it means to be truly free, untouchable, not because nothing touches you, but because nothing has the power to break you again.